Professor Smajljaj, thank you very much for joining our interview series.
Thanks for inviting me to the interview.
Let me start right away with the first question. How has populism shaped political discourse in Kosovo, and which parties or leaders have utilized populist rhetoric most effectively?
Actually, a dose of populism was almost there since the time of pluralism, since democracy came here in 90s. But it was a sort of a soft populism, mostly found in rhetorics of politicians trying to mobilize people based on the usage of some words and so on. But recently, since 2019, 2021 mostly, then is one of the major parties which it cannot be any longer considered as a sort of a soft populism, but much more as a hard populism, because it also has this element of anti-establishment element, which mostly characterizes hard populism, I would say. It is mostly anti-establishment because one of the main slogans of the party was that we are going to build the Third Republic, referring to consecutive developments of the French Revolution, moving from one republic to another, so aiming to create this a new establishment in Kosovo, mostly referring to also dividing the society into two, which is another feature of populism, the corrupted elite and the good people as well. Another feature was that the leader of the party, which is Levizia Vetvendosia, Movement Vetvendosia, they initially hesitated to call themselves as a party because they say we are a movement claiming to be a sort of a social movement, but they are a political party because they contest elections and they aim to take the government. And those are the main features, I mean, of making this political party a populist movement. In terms of the ideology, I would say if we divide populism into left and right, it has elements of, let's say, a bit of leftist, but it is much more a type of populism which is known as a Valence populism. Is a mixed, because aside from, let's say, on the left side trying to increase the redistribution, although the redistribution as a social policy was quite low, but it managed somehow to gain support of a considerable number of people, mostly redistribution with the kids, with a small amount of monthly payment to the kids. Let's say it started with 10 euro, then it moved to 20 euro, which is not much, but then also helping the mothers who gave birth, let's say, and so on, as a sort of redistribution. But mostly, aside from this, the way how the party came to power was being an anti-establishment in the way that it was not satisfied with the state, how it was created. Initially, they had also very much still promoting it like as an ethnic Albanians, let's say, claiming to create an ethnic Albanian state, not only in Kosovo, but in Albania, Macedonia, in other parts where the Albanians live. And also it was against the role of international community in Kosovo. And if we see the way how Kosovo became a state, the role of international community was vital. It was necessary because of its legal status, because of the way how the Yugoslavia break down and the position of Kosovo within Yugoslavia, which was different from other 6 republics which existed. And the role of international community was vital, but due to this ethno-nationalist ideology, so they were against this. Of course, once they came to power, since they are in power now, almost alone in power for 4 years, now they are going to finish the mandate, and this coming Sunday are going to be elections. They
Right.
have decreased a bit this rhetoric of ethno-nationalism, but the actions taken in the northern part of Kosovo, which still Kosovo governments have difficulties in extending the authority there, has fueled further this ethnic nationalism there, and it has somehow made steps back in terms of including the Serb community in the northern part of Kosovo into the state institution, making them to recognize the authority of the state. And those actions actually they are very much in line with long having this ethno-nationalist ideology, I would say, which the movement self-determination, the movement the Levizia Vedvendosje, actually had for a long time since
Right.
it existed.
Right, right. How does Vetevondo's populism differ from other populist movements in the Western Balkans and Europe, particularly in terms of its nationalist and leftist ideological blend?
In terms of, especially if we see first populism in the Western Balkans, I think the populism in the Western Balkans, I would consider it is still at the level of the rhetorics, excluding uh, probably. I would say in the Republika Srpska in Bosnia, the political party of Dodik, which is also an anti-establishment party, which struggles to secede from Bosnia, let's say, or either to be an independent state or to join with Serbia and so on, in ethno-nationalist terms as well. In the other parts of the Western Balkans, at the various levels, we could find populism at the level of discourse as a strategy of gaining votes, but not as being so against, let's say, the establishment, trying to fight the prosecutions, the institution of prosecutors, the institutions of courts, let's say, trying to blur this division of power, which, of course, as a new democracy, it was still being developed. And the current government, what actually is doing is very much trying to take control of, because when I say Valence populism, like fighting corruption, fighting state capture was one of the main slogans. The state is captured by now the opposition parties as they used to rule for around 20 years. And we are coming to power to fight this. But what actually happened is just that they are doing the same, trying to clean up the people who are there and trying to place their own people there. In terms of relation to the populism in the Western Europe, let's say, in the rest of the Europe, uh, which is often linked to xenophobia, let's say, against the migrants. In Kosovo, there is no such an issue. We are not flooded with migrants. Maybe rarely we might be a transit route, let's say, but there is no flood which can be considered as an issue that needs attention of politics and so on. In terms of populism in relation to Euroscepticism, which is very much in Europe, I would say that there is a dose of hidden Euroscepticism. And why hidden? Because if we see the Eurobarometer data, which measures consistently Euroscepticism, Kosovo is the highest, which is in favor of European integration. But
Right.
the current government, this ethno-nationalist ideology and the actions in the northern part throughout these 4 years to extend the authority of the state, it has developed a sort of, I would say, implicit Euroscepticism, especially also due to the role that European Union has in the dialogue between Serbia and Kosovo,
All right.
often blaming European Union of taking sides, let's say, taking sides with Serbia, not being neutral, let's say, or not supporting us. And this is increasing quite considerably a dose of Euroscepticism at the masses level. But it's still, I would say, at the level of an implied Euroscepticism, because I think no party dares to speak openly against joining European Union because people see the perspective there. But a sort of an implied is very much being developed there.
Right. To what extent has populist rhetoric contributed to the electoral success of parties like Vitevandos, and how has their governance aligned with or diverged from their populist promises?
The populist rhetoric has helped a lot, and the most extreme one was the case of Vedvendosja, let's say, polarizing society into very much extreme levels, like they in one side and all the others together on the other side. Within the rhetoric was that they have destroyed the state. Everything has been destroyed within 20 years, let's say, which is, of course, is not true, because within 20 years, we got freedom, we got the state that we did not have in the past, let's say. But the rhetoric was in this way. It was also the issue that the institutions have been captured by the other governing parties in the past. There is a corruption, there is organized crime, and so on. And in this way, then the movement with Vedvendosja was able to gain this popular support, because Kosovo has a multi-party system, and it also has a single electoral zone proportional system, which is expected the vote very much to be divided. But actually, these institutional obstacles, which usually would prevent any party from alone winning or making the government in 2021, it was unexpected. It managed to defeat all other previous parties, mostly due to this rhetoric of this polarization, that we are the good and the rest are the evil, and then we are coming to power to bring justice, let's say, to bring meritocracy, to bring rule of law, to open the possibilities to everyone, not just to people who are linked to parties, for example, in terms of employment, saying that it was actually to a large extent that enabled to get a job, let's say, in the public institutions or public companies, one needed a card of the party, let's say. And with those promises, the current party came to power and gained popular vote, winning more than 50%, which is quite rare in the multi-party system, which has a proportional electoral system. But it managed to defeat all the, if I could call them, traditional parties, because they are still just 20, 25 years of life after the war. And after they came to power, what they actually did, if we refer to the theory of Müller in terms of how populists colonize the institutions when they come to power, what they actually did, they used all possible means. They tried to make all possible legal changes, law amendments, to open the way for their own people to bring them to the institutions in a form of, as Müller calls, a sort of colonizing the institutions.
Right.
Saying in one way, and this is what actually somehow disappointed many people, that this is not what for you have gained the votes. You gained the votes based on the promise that you would bring justice, equal opportunities to everyone, and so on. And now there is a tendency to downsize this, what they have done, with a sort of a success in the northern part of Kosovo. Again, mobilizing this ethno-nationalist sentiment based on, let's say, during the war experience between Albanians and Serbs and so on, trying to minimize the lack of not fulfilling the promises, but even going further, doing what the other parties have done up to 2020 or 2021.
Your article titled Populism in a Never-Ending and Multiple System Transformation in Kosovo, the Case of Vitevandos, argues that Kosovo's incomplete democratic transformation has provided fertile ground for populism. In what ways has Veterandos capitalized on this? And do you see any indications that it may shift towards authoritarianism as a governing party?
As a never-ending transition, yes, I would say the whole Western Balkans is experiencing this. Transition in the Western Balkans started in the early 90s with the fall of Berlin Wall and so on. And in the Western Balkans now we have entered into the fourth decade of democratization, let's say. In Kosovo, a bit, I would say, sorry, a bit late due to the war and so on. But still, we are in the sort of a third decade of democratization, I would say, after the freedom. And in this period, now we see a number of studies speaking of going back to authoritarianism. And some would say that we have entered into a sort of a transition to going back to authoritarianism in the whole Western Balkans. We see a single party dominance in Serbia, for example. We see a single party dominance now currently in Albania, let's say. And what we could see that the only thing which currently still is keeping the multi-party systems there, I would say, are ethnic parties. Parties linked to certain ethnicity, they still are viable, I would say, are significant in terms of maintaining pluralism. In case of Kosovo, these elections on incoming Sunday would determine a lot on the future of Kosovo democracy as well. If opposition parties manage to come back again, let's say in a form of coalition, or if they would be able to make coalition with a current party with a party in the current government and so on, would soften the possibility of making steps further towards authoritarianism. And further to this, as young democracies, as a not yet consolidated democracies, institutions are very fragile, institutions are very weak to oppose any authoritarian tendencies, especially if institutions are faced with a government which has more than 50% of the votes. And in such a very weak institutions, adding to this that looking at the political culture in Kosovo, let's say, and the lack of society in the past with historical, in the political history with democracy and so on, I would say that there is still a very much presence of authoritarian political values among the society. Linked to, even now we have claims that around the electoral campaign calling the leader of Vetvendosia, Albin Kurti, calling him a father. You are our father. And those are authoritarian signals. Aside from unable institutions, which were quite weak, which I would say they were also captured by the previous governing parties as weak institutions, as just born institutions. And this was a very useful momentum for the current government to capture now institution by itself. And this has happened in all boards, governing boards of all public companies, in all the ministries when it was possible. We have changes in the law of the civil servants, which opens the way to replace the current civil servants with the civil servants loyal to the political party in the government. We have also recently an open attack of the prime minister to the prosecutors and to the judiciary. There was a case being investigated on a corruption affairs in one of the ministries. The prosecutor sent the invitation to prime minister to be interviewed as a witness, and he rejected the invitation. He said, if you want, you could come to my office at this time and interview me. I'm not coming to your office to be, just as an indicator of many other developments which highlights the tendency of the government to undermine, or at least not to be oriented towards building up this division of power, which is necessary for democracy to exist. Democracy in Kosovo and in the Western Balkan, I would say, are quite easy to be stepped down. Mostly
Right.
still they rely a lot on the international support.
Right.
And as we see now changes in the US government and the EU being at a sort of a crossroad, if the support for democratization in the region is going to be decreased, automatically this is an additional possibility of populist parties to bring back authoritarian regimes.
Right. How do populist movements in Kosovo interact with the European Union and other international actors? Does populism present a challenge to Kosovo's European integration?
I would say yes, it presents in relation to European Union and also to the US, I would say, which are the two main sponsors of democratization in the region and in Kosovo as well. The current government has mostly mostly dealt with them in a way of a belief of being a sovereignist attitude. And this sovereignist attitude, claiming that we are a sovereign country, let's say, ignoring the role of international community in building the state of Kosovo, it has undertaken, as international community is saying, it has undertaken unilateral actions in the northern part of Kosovo. And the actions, as the government claims, of a sovereign actions, saying that we are a sovereignist political party, in the northern part of Kosovo, in these 4 years, has mediated a lot a relationship between our government and European Union and United States, which European Union, in one point, has put sanctions in Kosovo government, looking at it as actions which, let's say, of course we know that it is obvious that the Serbian government uses Serbian community in Kosovo, let's say, and not to let them to integrate in the institutions of Kosovo and so on, trying to create a sort of sabotage to the statehood of Kosovo. But international community was of the stand that these things needs to be settled together with international community and to be settled with dialogue. But the Kosovo government has taken, as they say, these unilateral actions. Now Kosovo is under sanctions from European Union, and also United States has consistently blamed Kosovo government for those actions, and this has led to often declarations by the special representatives of the US to the region, saying that this is making things difficult for us, the US government, to promote further the Kosovo state, to ask other states to recognize Kosovo. Because, and I think the government has ignored this, has ignored the fact that Kosovo is recognized by less than two-thirds of the EU, of the UN members, let's say, by around 110, 117, it is said. Some they have withdrawn the recognition, some they have frozen. It's not yet clear, but around 110, 117, which is not sufficient, let's say, to be a member of United Nations, which is somehow necessary to consolidate the statehood at the international level. And without the support of US and European Union, this is, I would say, impossible. There are other states around the world which help Kosovo, but they don't have the capacity, like the US has, let's say, or European Union, to convince others to recognize Kosovo as a state, which is vital for the
Right.
existence of the statehood. And so and furthermore, such a populist government in terms of integration to European Union, uh, obviously it delays the process, because we know that the main criteria for joining European Union is democracy, is division of power, is a strong institutions, is and if there is a tendency to capture the institutions, to capture the state, to blur the division between legislative, executive, and judicial, especially between executive and judiciary, all this shows steps back in the process of fulfilling the criteria to join the European Union. But declaratively, the government tried to be very much active, let's say, when the fund of European Union was promoted for the fund of growth for the Western Balkans, the government has already sent the agenda there with the reforms needed to be done. But if you see on the other side developments, then we see that uh, there are steps which would undermine the process of fulfilling the criteria needed to join the European Union.
All right. Given Donald Trump's America First approach and past skepticism towards US commitments abroad, how do you foresee a second Trump presidency impacting Kosovo's relationship with the United States, particularly in terms of security guarantees and diplomatic support?
I would say that the Trump administration is still consolidating itself. In terms of priorities, I would say at the world level, as we see now, new ideas coming. Let's say things which were at the top priority, let's say, now are being revised, such as the issue of the U.S. aid, for example. And U.S. aid was one of the main supporters of democratization process in the region. I would say it's still a bit early to speak because we are entering into the world of very much unpredictable world of how exactly would be the Trump's approach in the region as also in case of Kosovo as well. What is clear for now is that Kosovo statehood remains heavily dependent on the US support. It remains heavily dependent on increasing the number of recognitions, heavily dependent on possible membership in the NATO, for example, in the EU membership as well, because we know the the relationship between US and the EU and the possibility of joining European Union when US asks its allies to do so and so on. Furthermore, the US troops in Kosovo within the KFOR are the major guarantees of security and security, and I would say, and major guarantees of preventing any possible conflict in the region, especially between Kosovo and Serbia, since Serbia still tries to undermine the at least the sovereignty of Kosovo and the northern part of Kosovo using the loyalty of the Serbs towards Serbia. And if, let's say, there would be decision to minimize the US troops in Kosovo, let's say, or to withdraw them and so on, this is, or at least if Kosovo doesn't come into one of the priorities of the US government, then this is a bad news for prosperity of Kosovo as a state. It doesn't mean that there are no other partners who are willing to help, but they don't have the capacity. They don't have the
Right.
capacity that US. We all know the role of the US in the NATO intervention to stop ethnic cleansing in 1999. It was vital. We all know the support of the US giving a green light to declare independence and to ask many states around the world. I think most of the states, the highest number of the recognition came from the US support. And if Kosovo is not any longer in the among the priorities then of the US, then this is going to create a sort of a bleak future for perspectives of the Kosovo state.
Right. And lastly, Professor Smajljaj, Kosovo has relied heavily on strong US backing in international recognition efforts and dialogue with Serbia. If Trump were to reduce US engagement in the Balkans or push for a different diplomatic strategy, what potential risks and opportunities might arise for Kosovo's international standing and regional stability?
Uh, I would, as I already said, your Kosovo state remains heavily dependent on the US, heavily dependent on the US support, and based on this, now currently there is an agreement known as Franco-German plan, and there is an annex to this plan which Kosovo and Serbia agreed in Brussels and in Ohrid as a sort of an agreement which was meant to bring a solution to the issue, and the U.S. Up to now has supported this. Of course, it was the administration of Democrats when the agreement was reached, but the agreement so far is not being implemented by both parties, often saying we haven't signed the agreement, we need to sign, we have accepted. Currently, the agreement is the main platform currently for the European Union and for the US to solve the issue between Kosovo and Serbia. One of the key elements in this agreement is creating an association of Serbs community in Kosovo, which in the agreement of Brussels, it creates a sort of a self-management for the Serbian community. It remains to be defined what the self-management means in the statute of this association. But now with the new administration in the US, I think it's a bit, I wouldn't say early, but we still need some time until the government consolidates itself fully. And it creates and probably is revising a number of activities abroad. And I hope in this revision, Kosovo, as I said, remains a priority for the US government, because the US support is vital, is necessary for the, I would say also, as actually things are, even vital for the prevention of any possible conflict in the region, and vital for the consolidation of statehood of Kosovo abroad, in terms of increasing the number of recognitions by the states, in terms of being members of international organizations, if possible even United Nations, because this then would be the final act of there would not be, Kosovo state would not any longer be seen by a considerable number of states as a contested issue, but would validate its statehood and would legalize its statehood. The support of US continues to be vital. We had an agreement just before the Trump was going to leave the first administration, known as the Washington Agreement, but this agreement was totally ignored by the new government in Kosovo. An agreement which brought a recognition from one of the states, like Israel recognized Kosovo at that time in this agreement. The agreement did not speak much of, let's say, like the final settlement, but it was a sort of an agreement which would probably enhance the dialogue between Kosovo and Serbia to come to a final solution. It remains to be seen whether this agreement would be reactualized, and also whether probably there is also another issue which was discussed during the Trump administration, the land swap proposal between the northern part of Kosovo and some parts of where the Albanians are living in Preševa Valley, to have this sort of a land swap, which was then totally ignored by the current government. And at that time, there was a narrative. It was not completely sure, but there was a narrative that with this final settlement, there was probably a possibility of agreeing also, or convincing Russia and China as the two members of Security Council to open the way for Kosovo to be member of United Nations. But there were voices also saying that those who are doing this are the traitors to Kosovo, because they are giving land to Serbia and so on. It was not clear, but it is one of the options probably that might be brought back, and or even any other, let's say, options that might come from Trump administration that I don't know currently. As I earlier said, there are very much unpredictable things coming out, let's say, and it's very difficult to foresee things in this very much unpredictable developments.
Professor Smajljaj, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot for inviting me to the interview. Thanks a lot.